Okay guys, so this is part 2 of the my birthing experiences, and I left off by saying that I was 3 months pregnant, or why do I keep saying 3 months? 3 weeks pregnant, and we had been picked by a birth mother. Then after that, we had to meet the birth mother to make sure that this was a good match. I have never been more nervous in my life. I mean, and it was surreal meeting Megan. I'm going to say her name on here because it's not really a privacy issue. I'm very open about the fact, and Megan's very open about the fact that we are friends. We are in touch. We're in contact. We ended up having such a good relationship with her. We met her, and I just immediately, my heart, I know it's going to sound weird, but I loved her. The minute I saw her, I loved her. She looked very nervous. She looked very broken and emotional, yet I could see in her eyes this determination and this confidence that this is what was right. And this bravery, such bravery to know that she wasn't ready to raise this baby, but that she still wanted to bring him into the world. And we, at that point, going in to meet her, did not know the gender of the baby. We knew that she knew the gender, but she wanted to tell us in person. And I thought that was so special. And so she told us then at that meeting that she was having a baby boy. And I had a feeling it was a boy. I don't know why. My intuition told me that was a boy. And so I was not surprised when we found out that it was a boy. So we knew, and that just, and seeing her with her belly just made it all so real. Like, this is a little boy that is going to be ours and going to be brought in the world, and here he is in her belly. And we got to know her. She told us her story because, you know, she had read our portfolio and knew everything about us, and now we got to hear about her. Her and I had a lot of similarities, a lot of similar interests, and so we kind of hit it off. She had a very sad story with her family. Her family was not supportive of the adoption at that point, and she was sort of at odds with her family. So she brought her best friend with her to support her. Her best friend was who she was living with at the time and was definitely holding her hand and walking her through this experience. And so we got to meet her, and we agreed that we were going to get together. The town that she lived in was about 2.5 hours away from us, but we agreed that we were going to come to that town on the weekends until she gave birth and just kind of get to know her, talk about, you know, what to expect, what she wanted from the birthing experience, what we wanted. And from that point, we started developing a very close relationship with Megan. When we would go to her town, she would show us around, we would take her out to eat, we would talk about life, and we both had very similar morals. We both had a faith where we could pray with each other, and we grew so close to Megan. Megan literally became part of our family during that time. We went with her to get an ultrasound, and she was actually going past her due date. And a lot of people ask, you know, were you nervous that she was going to change her mind? I mean, honestly, there's always that chance. But once we got to know Megan, we got to see someone that we really ended up trusting. And I know it sounds crazy, and I'm not honestly a super trusting person by nature, but Megan, I mean, I guess it's just so hard for me to describe our relationship with Megan. The way that we had hit it off with her made me feel that this was right. Like, everything in my heart and my intuition was telling me that this was going to go through. The only thing that made it hard and a little iffy for me was the family aspect. Her family, like I said, did not agree with her decision to adopt. And so she was hearing a lot of things from her family about how this was wrong. And I did worry a little bit about the family causing drama and shaking things up. Also, because Megan and us were so close, we had her as a friend on Facebook. And I was actually starting to receive very harassing messages from some of her family members. And that was a point where I started to get a little worried, and I was very open with Megan about it, and she reassured me. And so was I nervous going into the day of Jason's birth? Yes, of course, a little bit. I think that's only natural. But deep in my heart, I think I knew Megan knew where she stood. And so now we're approaching the time where I get to tell you about the whole birthing experience. And this is going to be interesting for those of you who are considering adopting. This, you know, is different based on everyone's preferences. But for us, we had discussed with Megan what she would want, and we told her what we would want. And we came to an agreement that we would be at Jason's birth. We had already picked his name, so we knew his name was going to be Jason. We knew his middle name was going to be Allen, because that's my father's name, and we decided to name him Allen, so he's going to be Jason Allen. And we both agreed, me, Mike, and Megan, that we would all be there for the birth. The other people who were going to be there were her mother and her sisters, and her best friend. Now, her mother had come around to the idea of adoption. However, she was still trying to convince Megan to not go through with it. So even though her mother agreed to meet with us, which was a very emotional experience for everyone involved, she agreed to meet with us, and she admitted that we seemed like a nice couple and that, you know, she liked us, but she wasn't quite ready to say, yes, I support this. So the fact that she was going to be at the birth was a little bit nerve-wracking for me, because here I am, you know, Jason's future mother, and Jason's biological grandma isn't supportive of the whole thing. But she was starting to open up a little bit to it. Megan had said that she didn't want her dad to be part of the experience. However, the day of it, Megan was being induced, and the day of it, he did show up to the hospital, which was extremely anxiety-provoking for me, and he actually confronted us, and that's just a totally different story. He confronted us, and just, I mean, it was very awkward. Megan was clearly not happy with the fact that he was there, yet she's a people pleaser, and she didn't have the strength. I mean, come on, the poor girl was about to give birth. She didn't really have the strength to say go. And also she, you know, didn't want to offend her mom or her sisters. So she was being pulled in all different directions. And I started to get very emotional. I am not the kind of person that cries very easily. It takes a lot for me to cry. However, this was hugely emotional for me, and I was also pregnant, so that might have had something to do with it. And I just started like getting very emotional for Megan. I'm thinking, here she is trying to give birth, and there's this drama, like her dad showing up when she said he shouldn't. Her mom's in there kind of trying to convince her to not go through with the adoption. And Megan made it clear that she wanted her mom to be in there while she was giving birth, but she wanted us to be the first people to hold the baby. So, to hold Jason. So, you know, in my mind, I'm thinking, how is this going to work? This is going to be so awkward. And so the whole thing was very dramatic. Her mom was in tears and sobbing and saying, you know, telling Megan, this is your baby. But Megan was kind of saying, no, this is Mike and Rachel's baby. And I remember when we got word that she had delivered Jason, and Jason was being cleaned up, and as soon as he was done being cleaned up, we were going to get to go in there and be the first ones to hold him. Apparently something had happened, and I don't know if it had anything to do with Megan's mom or if it was just a miscommunication on the part of the hospital staff, but the nurse handed Jason to Megan, and Megan had him in her arms, but was like, no, you know, no, I didn't want to be the first one to hold him. I wanted his parents to be. And so she did get to, by default, she was holding him, but she said no, she really didn't want to. I think for Megan, she didn't want to have that connection because she was firm in her belief that we were the parents, and she wanted Jason to have that connection with us right away. I really admire her for that. I mean, and I feel so privileged that she wanted to honor that. So when we came in, we saw Jason on this little like hospital crib, and he looked so well developed. Like, this kid was not wrinkly. He had rosy cheeks. He was not crying. He just looked like such a little butterball. He was just totally perfect. And I just started crying. I remember thinking, dear God, let this go through. Let this be my son. I don't know. Yeah, it's not official by law that he is my son, but I feel right now in my heart that he's my son, and I love him. And I held his hands and I held him, and I just felt totally more emotional than I've ever been in my life. I was just taken aback by this perfect little baby. And me and Mike sat there, we got pictures, and we held him. We just relished it. I'll insert pictures below because it was such an amazing time. Basically, we were going to stay at the hospital all while Megan was there. Until she was discharged, we were going to be there. Her mom ended up being there the majority of the time too, but she was not allowed to spend the night. The hospital gave us a room, and we were actually allowed to stay at the hospital almost as though I was a patient there, even though I wasn't. And Jason actually ended up spending the nights in our room. He spent much of the day in Megan's room because she was kind of using this time to say her goodbyes in a way, or just get to know Jason a little bit and take this time to relish, you know, what she had just done. And honestly, like, she deserved that. She just brought this baby into the world, this very emotionally draining event and physically draining event. And she, in my point of view, deserved to have that time with Jason as well. And we got a lot of time with Megan too, but it was a little bit strained because her family was in there. And it was very clear that her family was not totally accepting of this. And I get that it was an emotional time for them too. And I did not want to come between Megan and her family, yet at the same time, this was an experience that we and Megan had planned out and wanted to, we wanted to be there. Megan wanted us to be there. And so, you know, I remember there was a time, Megan's best friend was very supportive of the adoption, and Megan's best friend's mom was also very supportive of it, and she ended up coming to the hospital. There ended up being a fight in Megan's hospital room between her best friend, her best friend's mom, and Megan's family, and it had to do with the adoption. And voices were raised, there started to be crying and screaming, and her best friend called me on my cell phone and said, you want to come into Megan's room and take Jason out of here because things are getting kind of heated and we just don't think he should be in here. And so I remember walking into the room where there was a fight going on, and I, again, was filled with emotion. I rolled Jason out of the room in tears, thinking, I don't want this precious child to have to hear this fighting, this bickering. This isn't what I want for him. And to me, it was like, you know, a sign that we were the ones for him. We were here taking him out of this situation. It was kind of symbolic, you know, here we were taking him out of this dysfunction. And I just looked down at Jason as I was rolling him down the hall, and I was just felt with such emotion and sadness for Megan, sadness for Jason, sadness for everyone. I was just so emotional. And like I said, maybe it was because I was pregnant. Normally I'm not a crier, but I was bawling. Every part of me was like just, you know, heart-wrenched. And I remember talking to the social worker. She came in and was very reassuring to me, like, you know, yes, this is a difficult time for Megan because she's being pulled in all sorts of directions. But every conversation that I've had with her, I am led to believe that she is very firm in her decision. And that was coming from the social worker. And I trusted the social worker, and those words coming from her mouth really helped me, because at that time, you know, having all that drama, that was probably one of the times that I was most doubtful about whether or not this was going to go through, because all the drama was sort of messing with my head. So anyway, basically then what ended up happening is after Megan got discharged, we were not able to take Jason home, but neither was Megan. At that point, she had to sign papers allowing a foster parent or a what did they call her? A bridge care family to take him while all the legal documents were going through. And so Megan was discharged, and we were allowed to meet the bridge care mom, who was a saint. She was just a beautiful person inside, and she just was such a motherly character. I felt so secure sending Jason with her. I knew he was going to be in fabulous hands. I knew that he was going to be okay. So we got to meet her. We got to actually go to her house, us and Megan. And that was where Jason was going to be staying. It ended up being a month that he was there. At that time, we didn't know exactly for how long, but they were shooting for it to not be any more than a month. Hopefully, they said a month at the least, but we were hoping, you know, for the best case scenario. And so that was an emotional time, because here the bridge care home was actually in the same town as Megan. And so we were going there as much as we could during the week, but still we were holding down jobs, me and Mike, both of us. And so we were, at any time we had available, we were going to Megan's town to see Megan, see how she was healing, see Jason, see how he was doing. And that was a very emotional, scary yet exciting and beautiful time. I look back at that month and it was one of the most dear months in my heart, because Jason at that point was nobody's. He was all of ours, and we were, you know, growing closer with Megan. There was still drama with her family. Her mom was still would come to the bridge care home. She was not allowed to come alone, but if Megan brought her, she was allowed to come. So she did come, but Megan was very good about, she didn't actually ever go to the bridge care home without us. She did once come with her mom, but we were also there. And so it was like she almost didn't want to go alone. She only wanted it to be an experience where we were all involved. And so I just remember, you know, one night we were sitting there in the bridge care home's living room and just talking and holding Jason and taking pictures. And it's just like such a beautiful memory. I'm never going to forget it. Pretty soon, we ended up getting a court date. And that was the week of Thanksgiving, actually. So it was such a special time. I knew it was a time filled with emotion, because I knew this was going to be one of the hardest days of Megan's life, was officially signing these papers over from Jason being in foster care to him coming to our home and being, you know, us being the parents. And so I knew that was going to be a really emotional time for her. No matter how confident you are as a birth mother that this is the right decision, this is going to be an emotional day for you. And I mean, I totally understood that. And I wanted her to get as much support as she could the morning of, yet I didn't want to pressure her. So basically her best friend, we made sure her best friend was there for her. The social worker was there for her. At that point, her mother was not involved, which is probably good. That day, her mother was not involved, which is probably good. Just because I think that would have been totally difficult for her and for us. But anyway, the morning of, we were told, you know, start heading towards Megan's town. I'm going to not say the town, but, you know, it was a 2.5 hour drive. And they said, start heading towards the town and we'll give you a call when everything's good. Woo, that was a nerve-wracking drive, because yes, you know, I had confidence that Megan was going to sign these papers over. But when push comes to shove, you know, anything can happen. And so until we get the call, it's not official. So we drove the longest car ride of my life. Seriously, it was 2.5 hours, but it could have been 24 hours as far as I'm concerned. But I remember my husband, as we were about 15 minutes away from the town, his cell phone rings and he answers it. And it was the bridge care mom, and she actually said, "Congratulations, Father." That was the first thing she said. And so the best 2 words we've ever heard. "Congratulations, Father." It meant that Megan had signed the papers and Jason was ours. And so we had a little day planned. We agreed that we were going to go to the bridge care home. Had had some snacks out, and we held Jason. We took some pictures, and then we decided to take Megan out to eat, just as like a celebration. There was a restaurant that was our favorite restaurant. It was a Mexican restaurant. Megan is 100% Mexican, so Jason's 50% Mexican, 50% Caucasian, and we always celebrated at this authentic Mexican restaurant that we loved. It was like our favorite thing to do together, and so we decided to celebrate this whole experience by taking her out to eat there, and that was a beautiful time. I mean, it was emotional. It was hard because, like I said, it was probably one of the hardest days of Megan's life, and I felt almost guilty being happy about it because she was so much part of my heart and part of my life that I didn't want to see her sad. But I did know that her tears were also happy tears. She knew this was the right decision. And so we gave her a gift, and we gave her a letter, and just really celebrated her decision. And we also made plans to meet again over Christmas to kind of celebrate Christmas with her. Because our idea was that we were going to keep in touch, definitely, with her. That was something that we all agreed on. We wanted to keep in touch with her. She wanted to keep in touch with us. And so we agreed that over Christmas time, we would see each other again and exchange Christmas presents. And not on Christmas Day, but just sometime near that time, we decided we would meet again and just visit and catch up. And so we left that day with Jason in our arms, and it was so beautiful. I remember that ride back thinking, I'm a mom. I'm a mom, you know? I have this baby growing in my belly, and I have this baby in the back seat, which is the greatest gift I've ever received. And I remember taking him home that night. We got home late. It was pitch dark, and we brought him into the kitchen of our home. And our dog ran up and just tail wagging, loved Jason right off the bat. It was just like meant to be. Jason was an awesome baby. He was, you know, a very good sleeper and a very good eater. And they always say when they're good with their milk, they are good sleepers. And that was definitely true with Jason. He could chug a bottle and he slept very well. So like at first, obviously, we had some interrupted sleep, and that was a little difficult. Me being pregnant and then also, you know, having to care for this newborn baby, that's probably another story in and of itself. It was definitely a challenge, but I look back at it now and just think, what a unique experience that was. Here I am, you know, growing physically because there's this baby in my belly that I'm going to give birth to, and I'm also a mother to this gorgeous adopted baby boy who I get to hold in my arms now. And it's just like, from day one, they were together. Jonah was in my belly and Jason was in my arms, and they were together. And it's just, I look back at those days and just, you know, I'm just filled with awe, and I just never want to forget the little details. I could kind of go through, I'm gonna morph this into a part 3 because this story is so long, and now I can get into Jonah's birth and that whole experience in part 3.